Welcome back. Time for another puzzle streak. We're doing training here, so let's get into it. First position, we're black. And the first thing you probably notice is that we can take the queen here. If we do, it does give white an opportunity to take our rook with check. But so far, we've taken a queen for a rook. Now, let's say we move our king up to a safe square. I think the only things we need to consider here is whether white can give us a check here or here. But in both cases, our knight can simply capture, and white will then run out of steam. In the resulting position, we're going to have basically a bishop, a rook, and another bishop versus just a rook and a bishop. So we're going to be much better off there. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Of course, I wanted to take the queen, which would have been right, but we'll just start a new streak. So not much lost. In this position, this first check here comes to mind. Black can't capture the bishop because it is defended by the queen. And also because of our rook's position, black can't bring the king this way. Therefore, on bishop h7 check, the king is forced into h8, abandoning the defense of the rook, which becomes undefended. We can then take that rook and it will be a checkmate. So we go 1 and 2. And there we go. We've got some runs on the board now. In this position, the first check that comes to mind for me is this one, because it puts a rook on the 7th rank. Yes, it comes with a check as well. It also opens up the influence of this bishop. So let's see what happens if we do play this. Now, I suppose if the queen blocks, we're going to take the queen and we're not going to worry about that. If he blocks with a knight, we can also take that knight with the rook, guarded by the bishop. And if he does nothing else, we're going to win the queen. So if he takes the rook, we take that back. He takes as well. And in that, we've traded this and this for this and this, which suits us because essentially we win a queen for a rook. So what we basically established is that after check, there's no way for him to block the check favorably. He has to move the king. Now the king has only a few options, so we can have a look at each of them in their turn. In fact, this one's not even an option because of the scope of the bishop. So there's only 2 options really available to the king. Now, let's say if the king comes here first, so we'll get rid of this one. If the king were to come here, we can follow up with this check. And at that point in time, the king can come this way, but then we have a checkmate. And so if we take that back, we would say that the king therefore would be forced here. And from this position, I don't see an immediate mate. Of course, we could try this check. And that essentially forces the king back to either this square or this square. And I don't really see the follow-up there just yet. But perhaps after check and he comes here, and we do this check and he comes here, which is all forced so far, we can bring the rook in here. Because once the rook is here, we will be threatening this as checkmate. And that looks extremely difficult for him to stop. Once our rook is here, his king can't move. The knight can't get back in time because we have this check in that case. The queen could give itself up, but it's not really going to help. So I think that's going to be right. The only thing we haven't looked at is what if he comes this way. Well, if he comes this way, then we could play, let's see. What can we play there? Guess we can still come here and threaten this. And that's a big threat as well. Let's see. Check. And he comes here. Could, of course, just take a pawn. it seems like we should go for more than that. And by bringing the queen here, we still could take this pawn. And if he tries to defend it, which is only possible by moving it forward, then he does allow our attack to proceed. And it can easily proceed like so. And then after this move, we can take with check. He'd have to take with the knight. And I just don't completely see how we follow up there. I guess we bring the rook in at that point and pile up on that knight, which will be pinned. So after check and he comes here, let's say we come here. Now, he doesn't have any checks available himself. And if he doesn't do anything about our queen getting to this square, we're going to have this check, which will force this kind of an arrangement where we get our rook to c1, pinning this knight, this pawn still being very vulnerable. So therefore, after this and this, he may want to stop our queen from getting here by playing something like this. But then we can come here, and the similar sort of idea applies, where it's a check, where he still has to go down this pathway, which again, I don't think he wants to do. So I think this is working out. What if he plays it this way to block the diagonal? I suppose then we can actually take this pawn at the very least, and that's not going to be a bad thing to do. We can just simply take that pawn, and we'll be threatening. What will we be threatening? We'll be threatening a rook. Yeah, I think this is all looking really good. He blocks with the knight, which is definitely not the most challenging. We take. How do we want to take? The most forcing would be with the rook, because it's a check and it forces this thing. Whereas if we take with the bishop, he can move the king away and we lose the chance to get the queen. So I'll take with the rook, and that's easy. There was quite a lot of calculation involved there. All right, in this one, this check comes to mind. Even though it gives a pawn away, it draws his king further toward our side of the board, and it enables not this check, because we would get captured by the bishop, but it enables this check. And at that point in time, he's literally forced to come here. There is no other move than this one. And then we just need to find out how to proceed. Maybe it's simply taking a rook here. So we give up a pawn, but we take a rook. Now, we just have to make sure that with his dangerous queen and knight here, that we're not running into trouble. If we, do we have time to take the rook? The good thing about taking the rook is we are threatening this bishop, and we're also threatening this pawn with a further check. And that would be actually very close to a mate. After check and he takes, we go check. He's going to come here, forced. If we take this, if we're given another move, this check is very nearly mate. He's forced to this square at that point in time. But it seems as though he's somewhat surviving. So what else can we consider here? After check, he comes here, check, he comes here. If we take the rook, let's see whether he can do us any damage. His queen really can't check us. His queen can't check us. He could possibly lift his knight up, but we simply take. And then there is a check, but we can come back and keep everything defended. So although this is somewhat scary, I don't think he can make anything of it after check, check, and taking the rook, hitting the bishop, which doesn't really have any great squares to go to. Yeah, I think we're simply just going to win a lot of material. The problem is winning material at this point. We're down a lot of material. We've only got a queen and a knight. He's also got a queen and a knight, and a rook, and a bishop. So we can win the rook and the bishop, it seems, through this variation of check, he takes, check, he moves. We take the rook, and then he does something. He has to do something. Say he pushes a pawn or does whatever. We can take the bishop, and there you go. We've somewhat equalized material, but I'm not sure if it's enough. Check, check. Do we have anything else right there? Let's also look at some other examples. What if we go check? He can't take with his king. He could take with his pawn. But then we've just given that to him for free. Why don't we start with this check? Instead of only looking at a 4 check, why don't we start with this check? This check could be nicer, because if he comes here, well, this is just an improved version of what it was before. In fact, that would be checkmate. So it still forces him here, but at this point we can actually come here with a check and that will also be mate. So it took me a long time to realize that that was just an easy mate in 2. But we got there in the end. So in this example, our bishop's under attack. And he has a passed pawn on the a3 square that's not far from becoming a queen. So it seems there's quite a bit of danger in this position for us. We need to figure out what we're going to do about it. So the only check that I can see in the position is this one. And I like it. It opens up our bishop. And because it's a check, he doesn't have time to take our bishop. He has to instead move his king, and he can't move his king anywhere here. He has to go to the back rank. And at that point, we can move our own rook back, and the king won't be able to come here because of the pawn. Can't stay on the back rank. Can't bring his rook up to defend because it's blocked by our bishop. So this is another mate in a couple. All right, so we're moving along. This is a free knight that comes to mind immediately. But it's not the only option here. Our queen is nicely situated to take this square away from his king. So we could give a check, which is a forcing move. And we're also then attacking this rook, which is undefended. Now, obviously he can take our rook, but if he takes our rook, we take back and promote to a queen with check and mate, since the king can't escape. So at the very least here, we win a rook, but actually it's better than that because there's actually no other move. He can't move the king anywhere. He's forced to take. We take back, and it's mate in 2. We could even do it with a rook. Okay, in this example, it is again black to move. We're very close to getting a queen, just 2 steps away really. But doesn't seem possible for us to defend this pawn. We do also have this pawn though, which is making progress very quickly. And it seems like this might be the way to go, because if we push this pawn, our king is in a great position to guard the red carpet towards promotion. He would essentially have to give his rook away to stop this from becoming a queen. So let's say we push this. Maybe he can actually take this pawn. We push again and he comes here. Then we push again. He has to give the rook up for the queen. And in that position, we've got a bishop still versus a pawn. And we've got this pawn versus this pawn. But is there something better? Maybe we should start by pushing this pawn. The reason I say that is because now we're about to get a queen. We're also still ready to push this pawn. But if he wants to take this pawn once we push it, then we can push this pawn and he's not in time to immediately swing the rook over. He has to come back. We push. Then he comes over. We push again. Now it seems like it transposes, doesn't it? We could go this, he takes, and then maybe... No, I don't think that really makes any more sense than the previous move. So I think we'll just do this. Same if he comes this way, we simply push. So I think this is the forced line, is this, this, this. Maybe he could also come this way, but we get a queen, he's going to have to give it up. And then we enter this position where our king is here. It's his move, but he can't really move this pawn because we just take en passant and get a queen, easy. The only thing is, can he get a queen? If he starts pushing, our bishop can always come here and just guard this queening square. Meanwhile, our pawn is outside the square. His king, sorry, is outside the square of our pawn. So in that position, it's his move. He would have to probably bring his king into the square of our pawn. Sorry, this pawn doesn't even exist anymore, does it? We can bring our bishop here and just sit our bishop here so it always defends this pawn. Gradually bring our king back, win this pawn, and push forward. I think, but I'm not completely sure. So let's say this. He takes. What if this move instead? Because what I'd love to do is prevent his rook from getting across. So if we do this move and he takes this pawn, okay, we start pushing. He can give a check. Let's say we move up here. In that case, he can take this pawn, so that's not really going to work. We would have to bring the bishop back. Then he comes back here, and when we push, he swings the rook over. So I don't see any other way. So I'm just going to push the pawn, but if it doesn't, it must matter which pawn you push. Surely they don't transpose into one another. If we do this, he takes. We do this, he comes across. We do this, he takes, we take. Then let's say he comes here, or here. And then, I don't know, it seems a little bit like it might be a draw. We come here, and our bishop holds this pawn while the other pawn holds the other pawn. But his king sort of outstrongs our own king. I don't see the progress being made. If we start with this, his rook can't really swing over this way because we get a queen immediately. So in that sense, it seems a bit more forcing. But after he takes, I don't really see how we're making our progress. Do we come here? Let's say he pushes forward. We come here. He can probably push forward again. We come here. He comes back. I really don't like that so much, but after this and he takes, and we simply push, he does just get to come back as far as I can tell. When we push, he comes here. Maybe what we ought to do in that position is sit our bishop up here and just protect this pawn for the time being. Problem is he then pushes this pawn, so I'm really not seeing it. This is a very, to my eyes, a difficult situation to deal with. I'm really not sure how to do it. What about this move? Just gives up this pawn for free. Does allow us to push this pawn a little bit, but he's really going to be quick here off the mark with this other pawn. I'd like to get this king, like our king would love to get active, but his king is too strong for us at the minute. So let's use this h pawn. We push it. He takes this pawn off the board. We have to push this again. Now he needs to defend. Now at that point, we take, he takes, or we take. Yes, we have more material. We have a bishop for a pawn. But is it enough? And how does that line differ from this? He takes, we take, he comes back. Maybe in this line, what he can do is go like this, and when I push, maybe he can go take, I take, he takes. And then although I try and get back in time, he's going to get a queen. So that must be wrong, because he takes, and after I push, it's not that he comes back. No. It's that he takes here with check. And when I take the rook, he takes the pawn, and then this pawn's going to become a queen. So this has to be the right option. Just by process of elimination, I can't see anything else even worth trying. So we'll get the queen, we'll get into this scenario, and I'd love to see this played out. I was afraid that it might be a draw. I didn't think I was losing, obviously, but I just was afraid it might be a draw. Anyway, let's leave this one as the last one for now, because it's been a very slow first few. Let's get this one and then move on with life. So here's a check, which seems to me like a checkmate. So let's do that and leave it there. I'll come back for a part 2 very soon. In fact, I'll even just pause the video and come back. We'll see you soon. All right, I'm back. Let's continue on. In this position, we have this typical setup where the queens oppose each other, but there's a bishop that can move away with check, forcing the king to either capture, move, or another piece to capture the bishop, at which point this queen will be undefended and we can take it. So we can win a lot of material in that. Here we've got another sort of interesting looking endgame where we both have a rook and a bishop, but black has one extra pawn, being this one. But that said, this is defended nicely by our king. We have this compact structure, whereas black's pieces, especially the rook, is pretty far away from everything else, and it's also on the same diagonal as the king, which is a dark diagonal that our bishop can occupy. Thereby, this check actually forces the king to move somewhere, giving up the full rook. And although this pawn can then move, our rook will be able to move back and prevent it from queening. So this is just going to be winning a full rook. Given where he moved the king, it's going to be better rather than coming back this way and allowing the bishop here. At this point, we're better off giving it check and then coming back to win the pawn afterwards. Okay, so here we could take a queen. We just have to be aware that he's going to take a rook with check. So we're going to take back. At that point, we're hitting this rook, and we're also hitting this bishop, but the bishop can move with check, and that's going to force us, let's say here. The rook still will be under attack though. The rook's going to have to move. So what have we got in that scenario? We've gotten a queen basically for free. Because yeah, there's a rook trade, but that's an even trade. Rook for rook is even, but just giving us a queen is obviously not even. Now then they get a pawn, we move away. We don't actually have to move away. Yeah, we do have to move away. And then, we go from there. But we do have to be aware that although we could win this queen, we don't have a queen ourselves already. So this might only just restore material equality. And is it really kind of good enough? After check, let's say we come here. Gonna have to do something about this. Let's say he comes here to attack us. Then I guess we can come back and slowly make our way back into the game. Well, let's just see. I mean, it's going to be hard to say there's something better than taking the queen. I mean, we could take here and just keep this threat on the queen alive. That's possible. Where would the queen go? That's not possible. Could come here. It's really hard to entertain anything other than taking the queen. Because, I mean, what else could it be? It could be this. He moves the queen somewhere. We don't have any kind of checks or anything. So I'm just going to take the queen. He takes, we take. And there you go. Okay, now black to move. We've got a whole nice body of pawns here. What are we going to do with them, if anything? We can't move our king up because it's being restricted a bit by the bishop. We could come here though with our knight. And that's a nice fork on both rooks. At that point, one of them moves and possibly attacks our bishop, but regardless of which rook we take, we'll also be then defending our bishop. So we can go like this. Whatever he does. We take one rook or the other and then move on from there. And that's an example of not thinking properly. Yes, the fork is nice, but you do have to think about what response they've made. So here he's threatening to take our rook. So we can take first. And, after that, he might save this rook. We move here. He might give another check. We move here. Now he runs out of fuel, and we've got a full extra piece, being the knight, as well as an extra pawn. All right, I'm going to leave this one here. Bit of a slow session, but it is what it is. It's still training, and we'll be back again for more very soon. Cheers.